Okay, hello. We're at the House of James in Abbotsford, British Columbia, getting ready for a talk and a book signing. The beautiful store.
Morning, morning.
One of my favorite stores.
Surely,
in the world.
that's okay. It's kind of a nice time. We've been doing this, I think, for 6-7 years, and it's just fun to see some of you are getting much taller than when we started this thing annually with Brian Davis, and Amanda's getting taller and older, and all of a sudden she has a book too, so this is exciting. Welcome here, everybody. There's a lot more muffins and stuff over there. Help yourself, and coffee and tea. Turn it over to Brian Davis and Amanda, and they're going to talk for a little while about their books. And,
All right. Really glad to be here again. I think I've come here every year for the last 6 or 7 years, and always make sure we stop at this store, because it's probably my favorite store, because for one thing, it's got a great selection of Christian fiction. I don't know of any other Christian store that does so well with Christian fiction. Another reason it's fun is to always try to predict, is it going to rain or snow? I'm here twice when you got a lot of snow. Here you don't get a whole lot of snow, but one time I was here, just a pile of it. It was just coming down. Well, I'm just going to give you a quick run through on how that happened. I started with my kids. My wife and I have 7 children. We were teaching them how to write, and I thought maybe storytelling would be a good way to teach them. So I wrote a story for them, got them involved in the idea process, and got them to write sample paragraphs to tell me what they think was going to happen next in the story, and I put their ideas into my story. So we had fun creating this story together, and it worked really well for them. All my kids now enjoy writing in one form or another. Obviously Amanda does with a published novel, and my oldest son James is a prolific writer, though he has not been published yet. In fact, he has a story he's working on that's now over 10,000 pages long. So it's crazy, I know. Well, this process ignited a passion in me to write. I'm a computer geek, okay? Math, science, writing to me was a tool to get things done. But when I wrote this story for my kids, I saw how storytelling could affect people, their hearts and minds, and so I wanted to make an impact beyond just computer programming, because that is a fine job, but I'm 9 years full-time author, and before that I wrote hundreds and hundreds of computer programs. But now after 9 years, you know how many of my computer programs are in use? None. 0. That's not impact. So I wanted to make an impact. So I took this story that I was writing for my kids and sent it off to publishers. Please publish my story. And the answer was, of course, no. So I just began starting to learn more about writing, books on writing, going to writers' conferences, and I did get better at writing. Well, a couple of years into this process, I had a weird dream one night about a boy who could breathe fire. Now, those of you who have read Raising Dragons know who that is, but it was just a dream. So I told my oldest son, James, the prolific writer, about it. He was 13 years old, and actually James is 29 years old today. Happy birthday, James. So when he was 13 back then, he said, "Oh, that's a cool dream, Dad. You should write a story about this boy who can breathe fire, because then it'd be a lot better than that other stuff you've been writing." We brainstormed how to turn this boy who can breathe fire into a story, and those of you who read it know that it turned out that this boy had parents, a father who used to be a dragon. It took me about a year to write that story. I sent it out to publishers, and they said no. But anyway, so I was wondering, how can I get this published? So I decided, I should probably show you this. Hang on. Over the 7 years I tried to get this published, I saved all my rejection notices. You like that? But I have this, I call it tenacity, some people call it stubbornness. I refused to give up, and I kept trying. Then one day I decided, if I'm really going to go after this with all my heart, I need to do what I'm writing about. I'm writing about young heroes who step out in faith and do dangerous things and go on these journeys, and so I'm going to quit my job and pursue this full time. I'm going to trust in God and go after this hero's journey and just say, okay, God, it's all you. Well, I had 7 years, and this is what I amassed. 1 year after making that decision to trust in God completely, I had contracts for 6 books. So, goes to show you what happens when you just said, Lord, it's all you. So one publisher decided to take a chance on this crazy dragon story, and it's funny, they were really nervous about it, so they said, we're just going to print 5,000 copies to see how it goes. That may sound like a lot, but we want to distribute them to every English-speaking country in the world, so it really isn't much. So they printed them, and they sold them all in 3 weeks. Gone. So let me tell you a little bit more about the books and how they all fit together. It all started with Raising Dragons. Many of you are familiar with it. That's Dragons in Our Midst. There are 4 books in that series. Candlestone, Circles of Seven, and Tears of a Dragon. Tears of a Dragon ends with a question that everybody wants to know. Did Bonnie keep her wings? I'm not telling. Then came Oracles of Fire. Eye of the Oracle is the first one. Now this is a prequel to Dragons in Our Midst. It describes everything that happened before Dragons in Our Midst. And a lot of people ask, should I read that first? You can, but I recommend it to be read fifth. And there are 4 books in this. So Eye of the Oracle, Enoch's Ghost, Last of the Nephilim, and The Bones of Makaidos. Children of the Bard is the 3rd series, and this is book number 1, Song of the Opulent. Anybody read this one yet? Wasn't it a really great idea? That's pretty cool, isn't it? You'll know that this story is written in a very unusual way. There will be 4 books in this as well. I haven't even started the 2nd book, and they were telling me, we wanted to come out in January 2012. I said, I'm not even going to be finished with the book by January 2000. But I expect probably late spring. Okay, now on to, those were my AMG titles. Now on to my Zondervan titles. My current series in production is called Dragons of Starlight. Completely different story world. It has dragons in it. Zondervan said to me, we want a dragon story. So I said, Amanda, I need a dragon story. And she came up with this idea for Dragons of Starlight. Anybody here read this one? All right, well, most of you do say. It's a really cool story. It takes place in another world. All my other stories take place in the real world. This one takes place in two other worlds. And the newest one that just came out is called Diviner. There's also an adult companion series to this. This one follows the adventures of a couple of teenagers, and this one follows the adventures of one of those teenagers' older brother. And those who have read it really, really like it, and there will be 2 more books in this series. 3rd Starlighter is coming out in any day now. I've heard October 7th is the last I've heard. So that's the sequel to this, and the 3rd book will be called Exodus Rising. So that's that series.
That is not a Zondervan title.
No, this is not Zondervan. This is AMG. I have one publisher do one series and one publisher do the other. Not my fault, but I won't tell that story. The other series is called Echoes from the Edge. That has 3 books in that series: Beyond the Reflection's Edge, Eternity's Edge, and Nightmare's Edge. They're really edgy books. No, that's a bad joke. Eternity's Edge, Nightmare's Edge. Beyond the Reflection's Edge is out there somewhere. This one is contemporary science fiction. It takes place in the real world, real time. And here's the first one, Beyond the Reflection's Edge. Real time, and it's, I recommend it for 13 and up. It really depends on the maturity of the reader. Actually, Zondervan is coming out with new covers for these, because we thought maybe the dullness of the covers kind of hurt sales, but we got more brighter covers, and I wrote an epilogue for this book, Nightmare's Edge. A lot of people thought that the story ended too abruptly, so I looked at it and said, yeah, you're right, it's too abrupt. So I wrote an epilogue, and it really turned out great. So, well, those of you who have already read Nightmare's Edge, now you got to buy another copy. Isn't that great? We're going to let Amanda talk for a minute, and then we'll have time for questions and answers. Amanda's it's going to be a brief talk because she has a very sore throat and she's got a cold. But she'll tell you about herself and how she became an author and the obstacles that she went through. So here's Amanda. Oh, you're short. I mean, I'm too tall.
I'm vertically challenged. That's not very sanitary.
Yes, sir.
Don't worry about germs, so I brought hand sanitizer and I'll be using it, so try to spread as few as possible. So I'm Amanda, I'm 20 years old. I know I don't look like it, it's okay. If I don't hear it at least a dozen times a day, it's not a good day. So I started writing about 5 years ago. I was 15 years old, and my writing was pretty terrible, atrocious even. Worse than the average 15-year-olds. Despite the many, many, many lessons from my father, just tried to get it in my head, it didn't work. One of the reasons is I have dyslexia. Some of you might have heard of that learning disability. It makes it difficult to process words and learn how to read and write. So I didn't learn to read until I was 9 years old, and I went through first grade 3 times, but I still graduated high school on time. And so it took me 5 years of even more lessons, for a total of 7 years now of listening to my dad's talks, but I didn't start writing until 2 years into that. So 5 years after my dad started drilling me with these things. But see, we've been traveling to places like this for 7 years, and I just tagged along because I thought it was fun. And so I listened to those in the background, and I came out with my book. It's called Precisely Terminated. It's a dystopian novel. Dystopian is a newly coined genre, but it's an old genre. 1984, for instance, is a classic that is dystopian. And Hunger Games is a new dystopia, and my book is better. For those of you who haven't heard of those books, a utopia is a perfect world. A dystopia is the opposite. So it's a terrible world. And that's what I like to make my characters go through, because it's more interesting. And my book is set 800 years in the future, and my main character is 16 years old. Her name's Monica, and she lives under this one world oppressive government where everybody has a computer chip implanted in their brains at birth. And this chip tells them what they can do and where they can go. And if they don't listen to it, it kills them. It sends an electric shock through their brains and kills them instantly. Monica is the only person in the entire world who doesn't have one of these chips. And most people say, so why doesn't she? And I say, well, it's explained in the first chapter, so you know what that means. Gotta read it. So Precisely Terminated is her journey towards freeing her people, and it's the first in a trilogy, so there will be 2 more after it. And I finished writing the sequel, Noble Imposter, about 3 or 4 days ago.
I'll read the first part to save her voice, and then we'll have questions, all right? Okay. You really are not to talk. Okay. We don't want to use the short word. Oh, I said it. Okay. How nice it must be to sleep so peacefully when doom awaited at dawn. Letting out a sigh, Faye pulled a threadbare blanket from a top bunk and surveyed the many beds and sleeping bodies lined up in the cramped room. How little they all knew, these poor, ignorant laborers. Perhaps they would die unaware of the tragedy about to befall them. As she folded the blanket and laid it back on the bed, tears welled in her eyes. Why did it have to happen this way? She was only a nursemaid, one slave in the midst of thousands. Why should she die because of one man's actions? It simply wasn't fair. No, it was cruel, inhumane, tragic, evil. She slowly clenched a fist. Fair, unfair. The time had come. The plan had to proceed. We'll stop there. So that's how Precisely Terminated starts. So you can see she's got a dramatic opening, and that's the way she writes. So